Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Read the Book First. This week, we have our first guest via Zoom. My dear friend Chandler decided to read Practical Magic with me. What a wonderful book. But anyways, she is zooming in from across the continent, all the way from Alaska, during the podcast. So very exciting for me as a producer and a host to try and do the whole Zoom podcast thing. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast. I do want to talk about some trigger warnings for some content of this book. Just any trigger warnings for sexual assault, for domestic abuse, for alcoholism. This book is pretty dark, darker than you would expect based off the movie. But with all that aside, I hope you guys enjoy this podcast. I loved the book and I loved talking to Chandler about this book. And of course, here I am with my weekly reminder. Please, please, please rate us 5 stars and leave us happy reviews and share with your friends. Thank you for everyone who has downloaded a episode. We have now hit over 250 downloads, which is amazing. I'm so excited and so thankful for all of you. Make sure you're following us at Read the Book First podcast on Instagram, because in a few weeks I'll be updating the schedule for the rest of season 1. Thank you guys for listening. Enjoy the podcast. Welcome, Chandler. Hi. Welcome to the first over Zoom podcast. This is very exciting. I feel like a grown-up, even though I'm 30. I've been a grown-up for a while. But anyways.
We should have looked up how far apart we are for this.
Almost a year.
No. I mean, like, miles-wise.
Oh, miles?
Yeah. Because I'm in Juneau, Alaska. You're on the other coast.
Yeah. Look at us, the furthest podcast. I mean, you're almost on a different continent. Not really, because Juneau's not that far.
Some people call
us
Canada. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's true. It's the furthest away. But we're going to be talking about Alice Hoffman's 1995 book, Practical Magic. First off, I really enjoyed this book. Like, I
loved it.
I finished it an hour ago, also for context. That was my plan today. I was like, I'm going to read 100 pages and then podcast. That's all I had to do today, which is wonderful.
I did not know Practical Magic was a book until I saw your Instagram post saying who wants to read this to me. And I was like, I want to read it right now. I will read this.
Yeah.
And it was excellent. I'm a big fan.
So and we're not going to talk about the movie until the next episode, obviously. That's the whole point of this podcast.
I haven't watched the movie in so long. It's not going to matter.
So I was never allowed to watch this movie growing up because my mom said it was because of the witches. I now know it's not because she actually didn't care. Like, she was never like anti-witchcraft. She just personally has no interest in anything fantasy. Like, so like even like biblical fantasy, like the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, she like, this is boring. So I was not allowed to watch it because it was, quote, boring to my mom.
Okay.
Which is interesting. But I did watch it for the first time last year. But like
last year
was for the first time. Like, I've seen,
it seems like a very Janessa movie to me.
I know, right? Isn't that wild? But like I've seen like clips and stuff and like the audios on like Tumblr and stuff. So like I knew bits, so I knew I'd always like this world, but I just had never read it or watched the movie till last year. But we'll talk about the movie, which I'm excited to watch it again now after reading the book. But
yes. Yeah,
so
you know me, we grew up with Classic Movie Sunday, which was anything from like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner all the way up through like, you know, Mystic Pizza. Anything my mom considered a good movie was game for Classic Movie Sunday. So I've seen this hundreds of times.
Yes. Yeah. So a quick little summary of the book for people who have not watched the movie. This book follows the Owens women, mainly 2 sisters, Jillian and Sally, from their childhood as they're raised by 2 quirky aunts who may or may not be witches. And then they grow up and it's about them growing up. And then eventually Sally has her own kids and it follows Sally's kids for a bit. And it's just about the Owens woman and like potential magic. May I say practical magic?
Almost magic.
Yeah. So you had the audiobook, right?
Yes.
Was the audiobook good?
I loved it.
Okay.
It was a narrator that I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks lately while I've been in dental school, waxing and drilling and all that. And it's not a narrator I was familiar with, but I thought she did a really excellent job with like, she's got a lot of like simile and all that stuff going on, kind of
Yeah.
long paragraphs and sentences that are
Mhm.
like kind of flowy. And I thought she did a really good job with the narration. So
Yeah, I feel like
I was,
her Hoffman's writing really would be great for audiobooks. I prefer audiobooks most of the time just because of how my brain works. But for the podcast, I have to like annotate and write notes as the host because that's the responsibility. So therefore, I have to sometimes I'll do both audio and the book together. But I didn't read the audiobook this time. I just had the 25th edition, which also I'll show you on the Zoom. It's so pretty.
oh,
It's
it's
like gold and it
pretty.
has like a really like 90s witch boot. And I was
Yes.
like very in style right now. But there's a little like forward. Did your audio have the forward by Alice Hoffman by
I
chance?
don't think it did, no.
So there's a little introduction that she wrote for the 25th edition, anniversary edition, and she talks about a little bit of what has inspired her, not really, but it talks about how this book inspired the rest of the books. So it's series, Chandler. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did see that.
And I saw that and I was like, well, there goes my reading plans.
Right? Yeah.
So there's two like prequel books about earlier Owen sisters, and then one, I think it's following the two daughters in this book. I'm not
That's
sure.
what yeah, I saw that. It seems like that.
But the intro, if you like, honestly, if you're just in Barnes and Noble, pick up the intro book and read the intro really fast. It was like immediately I read the intro and I was like, oh, I'm in love with her writing. Like just immediately. This was not even the book. And I love
Yes.
it. But she did talk about how the main inspiration of this book was not like the witchy part at all. It's about she wanted to write a book about women outsiders, which is like witches historically have been outsiders, right? And
Right.
how
Yeah.
women in general like have are outsiders in society, right, in a patriarchal society or whatever, and they have to save themselves often. And she was trying to write like a book that answered those big questions in the 90s, and she writes in this 25th edition, she goes, sadly we are still dealing with these issues. And I was like, oof, that's a bit much. But I definitely recommend reading the intro. It was very warm-timey. But this book does not have chapters. It has like chunks. And it starts with superstition. I love the little chapter titles, but
I did too. Yes.
I felt the timeline of this book, and we'll go through it, but it's gonna be kind of hard because it is like, I keep saying Wimbly Wombly recently, and it just is very Wimbly Wombly.
That's a great way to describe it.
Shout out Doctor Who, always. But immediately we get this big description of the house, and the house is such a character, and like every like location is a character. And like I don't know much about witchcraft, minus like literally from watching this movie last year and like TikTok witches randomly on my page, and like when we went to Salem. I was like,
yes!
That's my like base knowledge. It's like my base knowledge. I can't believe we went to Salem before we read this book.
Right? We need to go back.
I mean, not that this like it doesn't. I mean, it does take place in the Massachusetts part of it. And like that vibe.
This is a good intro to like quote unquote real world witches with like how spells would work if you're not actually like brewing bubbling cauldrons that are glowing bright colors. Like this is a very like realistic view of like if you were going to cast a spell, you would use like these herbs and this piece of this specific animal, and like you would say this very like poetry feeling but very like broad prose that would kind of like you could kind of put it into any context you wanted to, and it was very like real world witchy.
Absolutely. Yeah, and
I loved it.
It was so good. Immediately the writing, I was just like, write a grocery list and I'll fall at your feet. This is wonderful.
Yes.
But we meet the two main characters, Jillian and Sally. They are sisters. Sally is the older one. She has dark hair, and as a kid, she was very serious and responsible, like very classic eldest child vibes. Relatable, right?
Yes, from two eldest children here.
Oof. We're gonna have a very biased viewpoint of the eldest child role. And I already know now that Amanda is gonna call me out because she is the youngest sister.
Okay. I need to meet Amanda.
You do. I just can't wait for her to call me out about this podcast, which will be great. But anyways, Jillian is the younger sister, and they're very close in age, I believe. But she is very fair blonde, and she was like very lazy as a kid. Like it talks about how she just like would like to sit by the window and look outside. That's like what she wanted to do.
Yeah,
like,
just watch the street.
Just watch. But they were both orphaned one night after their parents were like off on a trip, and they were so in love that they didn't smell the smoke of the fire.
That was such a vague, like,
yeah,
open for interpretation part of the book. It's like, okay, my parents died in a fire because they didn't know that the place that they were sleeping in was on fire. And
yeah. And I'm just like, I mean, it makes sense within the context of this book that they were just so in love and infatuated, because love in this book is like you are having literally described as having a heart attack multiple times,
yes.
which I have issues with in certain parts. Like it's fine for, for reading it here and there, but like it's very dramatic, which it's fun in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But we immediately get that with that their parents died because they were so in love they didn't see the house burning. But anyways, they're orphaned and they end up living with their two aunts who are very kooky, always wearing these black cloaks, wash themselves in black soap. They talk about how this house is ancient and has been there since like their matriarch Maria Owens built it. And like all the stuff that is very like, we take this information to like, oh, they're witches. It never says they're witches. And it never says they're sorcerers. It never says they're like, none of that word is ever in here.
It could definitely be interpreted as very good luck.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Luck or fate, like very much that kind of vibe, and not actual hardcore magic. The aunts raised the girls to like never have a bedtime, and they could like sit up on the roof and talk, like, and eat whenever they wanted. And then I was like, read this, I'm like, this is like a very freeing childhood, which like definitely has its perks.
Yes.
Like, especially personally, I was like with the food stuff, I was like, that's great, love that. But obviously, kids do need some boundaries, and we see that. Yes. But it's interesting to see that's how the aunts raised them, because the aunts were like, we're your aunts, we're not your parents, and they kept that throughout the whole thing. And so so Sally and Jillian raised themselves kind of, or each other kind of, right? Sally would obviously try to be more of the parental role as they go into elementary school, but immediately they're known to be outcasts. Like even the first line of the book says it: for more than 200 years, the Owens women's have been blamed for everything that has gone wrong in town. So like these poor girls, like for 200 years. So as the girls are like in elementary school, this has been a precedent for 200 years. Of course, they're going to get so bullied in school.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to like read about these little girls getting bullied and their aunts being like, look the other way, read books, don't talk to them. Because that's what that's what the aunts did. But like,
yes. And it's very clearly like the other kids in town are hearing random murmurings from their parents and just sort of internalizing that and projecting it onto the girls. And it's just like, we've all sort of been in that position where parents say something about another family and you're kind of like, oh, okay, I don't know, be friends with them. But then you grow up and you're like, wow, that was actually probably not the best way to handle that.
Yeah, just small town bullshit, right?
Yes, exactly. Oh, goodness.
Yeah. And so they go to school, and like there's like lots of different like bits and scenes about them at school and how they're getting teased. But there's this whole scene about like all the cats follow Sally because she made a tuna sandwich because she's making her own lunch, and suddenly all the kids in her class are like teasing her because she's calling her a witch because of the cats following her. And this boy lights the cat's tail on fire in retaliation. And I'm just like, as a now former teacher, where's the teacher?
Yeah, right? Where's the red flag on that kid?
Yeah, absolutely. Goodness. But and then Sally screams at the boy and pushes him down because, of course, he just lit the cat on fire. And
animal abuse, hello.
Absolutely, like literally a crime, right?
Yeah.
And then,
oh my goodness,
the classroom upstairs starts stomping because they like had a quiz cancel, which that is the most relatable thing that actually happens in schools.
Yeah.
The amount of times I'd be like, I just told the kids I canceled the quiz. Sorry about the loudness. Like, absolutely happens. But then a tile falls down and hits the boy on the head. So, like, of course, another thing of like, is this magic or is this just timing and coincidence? But like, these poor girls just have a crazy, like they obviously like are loved from the aunts, but they have like a wild upbringing. But then we have the whole bit. So the aunts like are not welcome to the community, but women will occasionally at dusk come up to their back door and ask for help. And it's like they ask for like to like help with like pregnancy issues, with love, like just women's issues in general, you know, like of this time.
Relatable.
Right? Yeah. Like, and of course, you know, so it's like this weird thing that like, you know, it did happen with quote witches, whereas like you are outcasted, yet you are needed by this big, like half the population needs you because their population's not, their needs are not being met, you know, like because there's not a Planned Parenthood or whatever, like there's domestic abuse or like, you know, or they just don't know how to deal with unrequited love, like just you know, very like real situations. But the Jillian and Sally are like constantly like observing this and how the aunts treat it, and the aunts are like very no nonsense. They're like, we're not gonna lie, but we're also not gonna go out of our way to tip people. Like we're just gonna do the bare minimum, mind our business.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the aunts are kind of like, yeah, if you think I can do this, then I'll do it for you, but like I'm just going to do this thing. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, it's kind of up to you.
Yeah. Or like, if there's consequences, that's on you. That's not on me. Like, I am
you're asking me to do this. I'll do this for you. But if it backfires, don't come crying to me.
Yeah. And so, like, there's this whole scene. And this character, like, side character comes throughout the whole book where the girls see this lady from the drugstore come and like cry because she wants a man who's married and like happily married too, and the witches essentially have the same like what you just said reaction. They're like, we'll help you, but like I'm not telling you it's right or wrong, you got to figure that out on yourself. And so they give her like little spell or like whatever, they do some stuff, and the man immediately falls in love with her, like follows her around. She gets him to eventually leave the wife, like asks for extra magic, I think it is, for him to actually leave the wife, right?
Yeah. So he like becomes obsessed with her, but he won't leave his wife. And then she's like, oh my God, we're so in love, but he won't end it. And is that when they bring out the dove heart?
Yes.
Dove heart is like a big, I know. Gross. Dove heart. Yeah. I also think it's really interesting the aunts' role in all of this, because kind of at the beginning it's kind of like, oh yeah, they let them live there, but like really Sally was the caretaker and the aunts were just kind of doing their own thing. But then it's like, oh, but look at this cool way the aunts are kind of helping the oppressed side of the community, that like these women don't have any say, but then the women come to them and the aunts help them unquestioningly, but also like there are consequences.
Yeah.
And then kind of at the end, it's like the aunts, that shows their perspective and they're like, oh, they love them so much and all this stuff. And I think it's really interesting to see that sort of progression of like the aunts' point of view too.
Yeah, definitely.
But we're not there yet.
Yeah. But that's all true. Yeah. But then eventually, because of the second magic situation with the dove's heart, this girl loses her voice, which is such a symbolic repercussion, like
in love, in relationships, right? Yes,
she wanted so much for this love, specifically this love, that she like loses her voice and like therefore loses like her say in life almost. Not that people who can't talk don't have a voice, but like, you know, when like people experience very traumatic things, one of the biggest like repercussions and symptoms of afterwards is that they don't talk for a period of time, right? And so it's just like, that is such like a immense thing. And she also is like obviously tired because her husband now is obsessed with her and doesn't leave her alone.
Absolutely obsessed with her. So he's like no time to herself.
So she's getting fawned over constantly and can't tell him to just go watch a football game.
Yeah.
You know?
Just, hey, go get some ice cream. I'm gonna take a bath.
Yeah. Like, I can't even imagine that poor lady. But also, you feel bad for her, but also she's the one that asked for it so much. But
She worked so hard to have this man obsessed with her, and now she's like, wait a second, wait a second.
Yeah, and this is the love relationship that the girls are obsessed over. So this is what, like, seeing Jillian and Sally both see this and then see then how they react as women.
Yes.
Wild.
Because they're like early teens at this point. Is that right?
Yeah, they're still teens. And this is like right before Jillian suddenly gets beautiful and attracts every single boy in town, right? So it's like that changing between the two. Not that Sally isn't described as beautiful. It's just that Jillian is like immediately every boy in town's obsessed
this
with her.
Really, like, is it magical kind of attraction, or is she just the most popular girl in school? Who really knows?
Yeah. Just some other little things. I really liked how, like, but so like there'll be like a really in-depth like 5-6 paragraphs about them talking about this like ladies side store, the drug store lady, and then suddenly it'll be like, also every midsummer a sparrow would come into the house and they all hated it, and it's just very important to know that. And then it goes back to the drugstore lady and you're like, wait, what? And that's how it is the whole book. It's like
I wrote a note in my notes app and I was like, it feels like she Googled real life witchcraft. Yeah. And she just wanted to throw those little tidbits in there somewhere. There are like certain things. Yeah.
It definitely feels like she does not know any witchcraft writing this book. As someone who also knows no witchcraft, like, you know, not that like
same,
right? Like I know, like currently I have a simmer pot on because it is the fall equinox as we're recording.
Yes, of course.
But that's because I want my house to smell nice, and because my boyfriend has a aquarium. He did a water change and it smelled like gross aquarium water. So now I wanted my house not to smell like that. You know, not for the witchy intents, for the smelly intents. But like, right? So like, I feel like Alice Hoffman knows, and when she's writing this book, I'm sure in the other books she does more research, but like she knows as much magic as I do. Like, right?
Well, and some of the things feel like just like maybe like old wives' tales. Like one of the things that I wrote down is she's like, lye is beneficial for the skin when used every day. So they put like a tiny bit of lye in their black soap that they use.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, okay, so you heard this from like a friend of a friend of a friend, and you just decided to throw it in there.
Yeah.
And that's great. And you're probably right. But also, like, is that witchcraft? Is it not? It works really well with the question in your book, but where'd you find it?
Yeah, definitely. It's very much like someone's grandma lived in the Appalachian Mountains her whole life, and that's just this random things that they do. Like, it's very much just like random little things that probably that make sense from a very specific context. But like they do feel very thrown in randomly. And like, or very obvious like foreshadowing. You're just like, why are we learning about this random like side thing for 4 paragraphs? And then 2 pages later, oh, that's why.
Yes, I agree.
But yeah, so this is when like Jillian's getting beautiful. I wrote a quote. It's on page 26. Jillian broke hearts the way that other people broke kindling for firewood. And I was like, I love that. I love that.
That was a really good one.
It's just, I wrote down a few quotes, but I love that bit. And then it describes Jillian too, because she's like sweet and beautiful and wanted by everyone. But she like, there's obviously something there that's like missing, right? Because at 18, she falls in love for the first time and decides to go and elope. And she's like trying to get Sally, because they like hated they like loved and hated their childhood, right? Because like when they're at the actual house, they loved it, right? They got along, they like could sit on the roof, etc. But whenever they left the house, they had to deal with the torment. So of course, when they're teenagers, they're like, we need to get the hell out of this small town. Like every teenager has that moment for a few years at least.
It feels like they had this really interesting perspective of like, they knew they were missing something, but no part of them resented what they had, because they had lost these amazing parents that they loved so much, and they had this great home. And then like, oh, we're so glad that we had somewhere to go that still had similar values. But also they didn't really do the raising of us, not to their own fault.
Yeah.
So it's like this interesting balance of like, wow, how did these children have this perspective? But also like, good job having this perspective.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Jillian leaves at 18 to go elope, and she tries to get Sally to go. Sally says no, she needs to take care of the ants because she's the one that cooks and like all this. So Sally's like, no, I have to stay here. And so they write postcards back and forth for 2 years. And between this time, Jillian leaves her husband for like a mechanic at some point. Like she's just like full on, very much that movie. What's that movie? Fame, right? One with.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
very much that vibe. Like that's what I mentioned
Yeah.
Jillian going. Jillian is like not like an actual roadie, but like for like a few months she was like with a really cool band. And then she like was in an artist commune. And then she like lived on the beach. Like this is like that's like I imagine Jillian's whole life. It's just like place to
Here's the
place to
next
place.
wild adventure and the person that can bring me on it.
Exactly. While also falling into what she believes as this like infatuating love. Whether or not it's love or not, that's up to the person. But you know.
Well, and I found myself wondering a lot because it seems like Sally had like a very kind of mature perspective on like, okay, you get like one big true crazy love that she felt was like the grown-up version of love, and then Jillian was like, oh my gosh, he just makes me happy right now and that's what I want. And it's like living in the moment and enjoying the love we have and not getting trapped in that love like the girl from the drugstore. And I feel like they were two very different ends of the spectrum on love.
Yeah, and there's so many like opposites. Like obviously Jillian and Sally are opposites, and we find out more about Sally's daughters as they're not born yet. But like, you know, once they're born. But I wonder, we don't know like anything about the aunts, and I'm sure the other books Hoffman wrote like talks about them, but we don't get like they are like one is taller than the other. That's like the most descriptive thing I found. I was like, is that it? Like one's older. That's it, you know? So I wonder,
I was
just because there's so much like juxtaposition.
Yeah. I was constantly trying to like paint a picture of them, but it's like, okay, I want to sort of paint like a Jillian on one and a Sally on the other, but that really didn't seem like how they were.
Fit. No.
And I just was.
I kept imagining the ants from Sabrina, the Teenage Witch TV show.
Yes, like, I did the same thing.
Like older and like not as silly.
Yes, I agree. Very serious.
Yeah, they're serious.
Very,
just like
yeah,
that's what I kept picturing in my head.
They felt very serious early on, but then towards the end, it was kind of like, okay, no, they're like humans. It's fine.
But after 2 years, suddenly, there's no sparrow in the house on Midsummer, and so suddenly Sally is like, "There's going to be something around her." She looks around the house. There's nothing, and she takes this like, things change. This is like her realizing that things can change. Not that she didn't like watch her sister run away, a big change, you know? She's like, things change. She goes, I guess I can also change. And so she just runs down the street. And this is like, I can imagine the scene in the movie in this part, right? She runs down the street. She had like this crush on this guy at the hardware store. And she like runs into him and is like, falls in love immediately. Like, and it's just like,
it was very much like something she built up in her head. I felt like Sally is definitely like waiting for the world to tell her it's okay to do things, and Jillian is like making her own adventure.
Absolutely. But Sally like immediately falls in love with Michael, and they get married very soon, and like Michael's just described as like the greatest man. Like, he's like not just perfect for Sally, but like he's like wonderful. Like they're together. Sally's so happy. Like it skips around. Like suddenly, like she is having kids, right? She has Antonia. How do you say that in your head? Or how did the audiobook say it?
Antonia.
I said Antonia. I don't know. I said it back.
She said Antonia.
Yeah, which makes sense. Like Antonia. Anyways, Antonia is the oldest, and Antonia has dark hair, and the aunts are immediately obsessed with Antonia.
Yes, they're like, she is ours. Let's do this
immediately. And then 3.5 years later, they have Kylie, and Antonia. I have to change that in my brain. Antonia.
Either way,
Antonia is immediately very jealous of Kylie. And which is like understandable for a kid. Like you had 3.5 years of being the only child, and you had aunts that like 4 people loved you, not just like 2, right? And like, so that's understandable, but it's like a whole thing throughout their whole childhood. Is Antonia is just always just jealous and like awful towards Kylie for a lot of it.
And it also becomes like this, like there's a very big portion of the story that's very much centered around Kylie, and Antonia is just sort of like pops in every once in a while, and I'm like, oh, I forgot you had a sister that's living here still too.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. But when Kylie's born, it's like or they can tell that she can like see things that haven't happened. So it's like the
Yes.
most like magic witchcrafty thing that we've gotten is
Yes.
that Kylie can see the future low key, but they don't really say that, but they just kind of
They're
describe
kind
it.
of like, oh, she has a very strong intuition.
Yeah. Like when people look
Yeah.
at her, like they are suddenly feel better. Like dogs don't
Hmm.
bark around her. Like just like
Yeah.
small stuff like that. But when we get like a few passages about like how Michael created a community for them essentially. Like he gets everyone to, because everyone loves Michael, that they welcome finally the Owens family into the community. And so like
Yeah.
they're able to have
They
like
get like
birthday
that
parties.
neighborhood vibe.
Yeah, they have birthday, like never at the house because Sally's like, no one's coming to my house because then they'll kick us out again. But I just found it so cute that like Sally's version of love is this man who like obviously takes care of her and her children, but like creates a community for her, like that part that she was missing and she couldn't do for herself because she was too
Yes,
busy in her own brain. And I just thought that was like very sweet. It was very
I
cute.
agree.
Uh,
Yeah, he sort of was the like the connection to the outside world for her,
mm-hmm.
which she wanted so badly to be
Mm-hmm.
accepted by people other than her aunts.
Yes. But then at dinner one night, there is a death watch beetle found under his seat. And in like this common knowledge, apparently, and when this beetle is like marks you, you are like essentially cursed. Like you have a short time left on this planet. And like Sally is like trying to get the ants to help her, and they're like, we can't do anything about like we like it, we had no control over it, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's like just tearing her apart, but they're like, she's like obsessively trying to keep an eye on Michael while also them having jobs and being parents, right? But she can't do.
Yeah.
And so he's walking home one day and he steps off the curb and some teenage drunk drivers hit him and he dies.
Hmm.
And it's just like, it's so sad as a reader because you're like, these two girls, you want them both to be happy, you know, and you're like, Sally finally got, like, this is Sally's love story. Awesome. The rest of
Yeah.
the book is going to be about Jillian, right? And
Yeah.
her love story. That's like what you think at this moment. And then you're like, wait, Sally's one true love dies? What the fuck? Like,
Yeah, and
what?
she just it happens so quickly. It's like here's the
Mm-hmm.
Death Watch beetle, and then it's almost like she lulls you into this like, okay, so they could hear the ticking, but like
Mm-hmm.
everything was okay. But Sally was slowly becoming more obsessed with this idea that maybe his life was going to end, and then
Mm-hmm.
like all of a sudden it happens, and you're like, ah, wait, I don't
Yeah.
know, was it time for that? Ah,
It's just so
but you're
awful.
right, that was before they moved.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
she, of course, is horrendously depressed. Of
Mhm.
course,
As
like
we all would be.
anyone would be. And so she has like I think Antonia's like 3 or 4, and Kylie's like a baby still. So they like go back to the aunts, and Sally for a year is just in her room crying, and the aunts are taking care of the girls because Sally is just for very fair reason just full out distraught. Um, but
And it
every
seems like the aunts are taking really good care of the girls. Like it
yeah,
almost seems like they're more parenty to these girls than they were to Sally and Jillian.
it's the grandparent effect.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's very much
very
the
true.
yeah. Um, and like throughout this whole year, every Tuesday, Jillian calls Sally and just talks to Sally. Like Sally doesn't ever talk; it's just Jillian just talking about everything, which I just found
Hmm.
very sweet. That finally, like Sally, like obviously was like the parental child almost, and then
Hmm.
now Jillian is there for her sister, even if she's not physically there. She is like there. I found them really sweet. Also, something I meant to say earlier, what I like about this book a lot is like these characters are like all minus Michael, he's perfect. But everyone else is like so incredibly flawed. And you go from like you'll for like 20 pages, you'll be like, oh, I can't stand Sally. And then the next 20 pages, you're like her biggest fan. Like it flip-flops for
Yeah,
each one of the characters. I feel like that. Like there's always a point where like, oh, you're being stupid, stop it. Like, no. And then the next page, you're like, oh, just kidding, you're the best. And I really like
I
that about this book.
I definitely agree. I was like, oh my gosh, just like be a parent to your kids. Like there are
Mm-hmm.
bigger things out there. And then it's like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine how you like did all that. You're so
Right?
strong. Great job. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's wild. Um, yeah, about a year after Michael dies, Sally's able to go on a walk with the kids out to a pond, and there's a boy who pushes down Antonia right as which scares a bunch of geese to start chasing Kylie, and like essentially Sally goes into like mama bear mode and like scares the geese away so much so that they never come back to that pond. Like they're like no. And that like snaps her out of her depression finally. She's like, the world, like physically these two like big men and nature almost like attacked my children. I need to be the thing that stands between men and nature, right? And it snaps her out of it.
And that was just Antonia was like throwing their ball back to them or something. It wasn't like there was no reason for them to be negative towards her at all.
Yeah.
And she just had this flashback to her childhood where everybody didn't like the Owens girls. Yeah.
And then this is when she snaps out and she's like, I need my girls to have a quote normal childhood, so we're gonna leave. And this is when she decides to move to New York. And there's this great quote I wrote, and it says, sometimes you have to leave home. Sometimes running away means you're headed in the exact right direction. And I was like, oof, hitting hard with these quotes, Alice Hoffman. Oh. But that's the first section of like the first like chunk of the book. And like it covers what, 20 years?
Easily, yeah.
And that's
if not more.
Again, Wimbly Wombly time book. There's just not an orderly time.
Yeah. And I think like even later they tell you that like when Sally and Jillian's parents died, it was Sally who was like, hey, I don't want to go to foster care. You need to come pick me up. And they were kind of like, okay, we'll come fly to us and we'll get you at the airport.
Yeah. What a wild life. But the next section is called Premonitions, and this section is mostly about Antonia and Kylie growing up. So like they've moved to New York. Antonia continues to be like very headstrong and very mean to Kylie, like calling her like a weirdo and ugly and like all this like
mean.
Like yes, siblings fight, and like maybe it's different because we had brothers growing up.
Right, true.
So maybe it's a bit different because like I do have friends who say that like siblings that are sisters are like way different than siblings that are like opposite or different genders, you know? And like
they kind of know where it hurts.
But I also like Bo and I like were mean to each other for a few years. Like it was like very like we're really mean and then we're best friends. And then we're mean and we're best friends. But also Bo and I were like very physically mean to each other.
Yeah.
Instead of verbally. I don't know.
The only friends I have that were sisters are Sonia and Inga, and of course they would never do anything like this to each other. So
absolutely not. You know what I
mean? Yeah. It's hard for me to imagine.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's interesting that like because this book is so like about women and the bond of sisters, as someone who like I mean, as like growing up I didn't have sisters, so I'm like interesting. I don't know that like this is like relatable in some ways because I am a woman and I like, but also not relatable in other ways
but I could definitely see how like if Cooper were a girl, he could definitely, because he knows where to hit me, he knows where it hurts, and I could see him being even better at that if he were a girl. So I mean
I don't know. It's just interesting to think about. I've thought about that a lot about like anyways, back to the book. So Antonia is still just being so mean until one day she like gets like I think she gets some attention from like a boy, or she has a first crush, and she says something nice randomly to Kylie, and Kylie's like, what? Huh? What is going on?
This is after Antonia is working at the ice cream shop.
I think it's right before then, because this is like right. This is at the beginning, because the rest of the book essentially takes place the summer Kylie turns 13, and this is right before the summer starts. So it's like at the end of the school year. So like they are all going through a big change. But a nice little quote I wrote down: "Trouble is just like love; it comes unannounced and takes over before you've had a chance to reconsider or even think."
That is such a good one. It makes me, I feel like that's how Sally feels about love after Michael died. Like love, trouble, same thing, no difference.
Absolutely. That's definitely what she believes. But this is a quote
especially seeing Jillian's relationships.
Yes.
It's like love is trouble, trouble is love. I don't need that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that's the quote that is right before Julian suddenly comes back one night. So after 18 years apart, Julian returns. So Julian comes at night, sneaks into the back, drives up in the back of the house, and Sally is like immediately so abrasive, like, "Why are you here?"
Yeah.
Which is like, they've been keeping in contact this whole time. And like we find out later too that Sally writes her a letter. Like Jillian didn't get this letter, but Sally writes her a letter
Yeah.
being like, "I miss you. Get out of there. Come to me."
Yeah.
So the fact that
Hmm.
Sally had written that, Jillian had not gotten that letter yet. But then when Jillian arrives, even though Sally had already written that, she's like so abrasive
Yeah.
about it. And I just thought that was
Yeah.
weird. I mean, it makes sense for her to be a little abrasive, like, or like shocked
Yeah.
maybe, but it's just
I
like,
also I feel like Sally is used to having an idea of what's coming,
yes,
and she just
mhm.
did not see her sister coming. And
If
I feel like
Sally,
that
yeah,
threw her off.
if Sally had a Google Calendar, she would be obsessed with it. I feel
Yes, she
like,
would. She
which
would.
like understandable, but like, but like they have this whole conversation, and Jillian is like, "I got a big problem." And Sally's like, you think you have problems? I have
Yeah.
problems. I have bills." Like such a like a boring adult
I
answer.
have kids, I
I have
have bills,
bills.
they're in middle school. Kids in
Yeah.
middle school suck, dude. Like,
Yeah. And then
yeah, I
Sally just goes, "Jimmy is dead and in the car." And
the
you're just
car in your
like,
driveway.
and Sally's like, "You're right, that is a big problem." But
Yeah, and it was crazy. Sally's just like, oh fuck, what do we do? She's like immediately like sister
mhm,
mode. We're gonna figure this out. And I
yeah.
was like, I kind of expected her to be a lot more resistant to it. I was like, why
Mhm.
aren't you like telling her to leave and making her beg for your help? Like, what's going on here? Like,
I
but
think I
you
think
can tell she definitely has that soft spot.
it's a soft spot for Jillian and like the sisterhood of it. But I also think part of it is like she wants to protect the normalcy of her life. And what's like,
Yeah,
how do you get this big whole, like this big old target of not being normal, of having a dead body in your like your sister's ex-boyfriend's
right.
dead, like that like awful like thing to just bury it
Well,
under the lilacs. That's what they
and
decide.
yes, and Jillian immediately is like, he's dead. I killed him. And it's like, oh fuck, okay.
Yeah.
Oh well, okay, we're gonna figure this out. Like
Yeah.
my family, we're not tarnishing our reputation any more than it's already
Yeah.
tarnished. Like
Yeah.
let's figure this out.
And it's not even like it's funny like the word reputation. It's not like she wants to like affect her reputation and she just doesn't want to have one. She just wants to
Right,
be
exactly.
plain. She wants to be in suburbia. She wants to
Yes.
blend in, right? It's just
She wants to be
wild.
the anonymous neighbor that like
Mhm.
waves to you when she sees you,
Mhm.
but her kids are different ages than yours, so you don't really cross paths.
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
yeah,
But we do get like some backstory back and forth throughout this whole scene of Jillian and Jimmy. Jimmy is like just a no good drug dealer, like wants to be a cowboy,
hmm,
like kills animals for fun, like just
very volatile.
abusive,
Yeah,
alcoholic. Like there's some very graphic descriptions of Jillian and Jimmy's past. Like she essentially like to avoid getting hurt every night, she would the last few nights up until this moment, she would put nightshade in his drink to make him pass out so that she wouldn't have to deal with any sort of repercussion. And
right.
so like it is very hard to read, but also the way she writes it, like she doesn't Alice Hoffman doesn't hold back on description, but I also think like there's a balanced line when you're writing like this kind of like very graphic stuff. Like I don't read many
Mhm.
thrillers or mysteries because this stuff kind of it's not my thing. And this is like the most like thrillery mystery I've read in years, which is like it's kind of a mystery, kind of,
Yeah.
right? But I feel like I don't know. You can tell me your thoughts, but I felt Hoffman wrote it in a good enough way where like she's giving you what happened without going around it, but without also being so graphic about it.
Right. It was really interesting because it's like there's no uncertainty in what happened, but I also don't have to like read the description of all the graphic details. It's like, okay, this definitely happened and it was obviously terrible for Jillian and it's terrible for Sally to hear it, but I don't have to hear it and I don't have to experience all of it. I experience more the emotion of it than the actual act of it.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really effective way of portraying those kinds of scenes.
Definitely.
But it's still emotional for sure.
Yeah. And I like and for this being written in 1995, like I feel like that's pretty. I mean, I don't read many books that deal with this kind of content. So like I don't have a big wealth of knowledge on that of how people write this, but I feel like it's like it stands to how it should be written, in my opinion, nowadays with us and us how we like as a society treat these kind of topics more back then versus back then, I think.
It was when I was listening to this, I was kind of sitting on the couch and James was watching football, and I just remember he paused the football game and he kind of looked over and he's like, "Are you okay? Like, what's happening in this book?" And I was like, "Well, nothing yet, but I'm pretty scared." And he's like, "Yeah, like this isn't great." Like he was very much like, "What the hell are you listening to?" But also like nothing has actually explicitly happened yet. So it was interesting to see him listening to that too. And he's like, "Is this how you feel, like walking in the dark by yourself?" And I was like, "Yes, this is why I don't walk in the dark by myself."
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's like a very good way to think about it. Yeah. But anyways, so like, is Julian guilty of his death? Potentially. They think that he overdosed on nightshade. And so while they were driving, and they were on the way to see Sally anyways. Like they were on the way to New York anyways, but he died in New Jersey.
Yeah. She was going to tell them that they were coming, but she hadn't told them yet.
Yes. Yeah. And so they bury Jimmy under the lilacs and say, "That is that." And like, just move on with the next day. Yeah. And so next day, like the girls meet their aunt for the first time, and Kylie immediately is obsessed with Jillian, which like makes so much sense. Like this girl is almost 13, and her like, again, I keep thinking of the movie Almost Famous. That's the movie, right?
Yes.
Almost Famous. That's what I meant. Not Fame. Almost Famous. I just imagine, who's that? Kate Hudson?
Kate Hudson.
Yeah, I just imagine like Kate, like suddenly being like, "Oh, here's your long lost aunt. Also, she's like the coolest fucking person on this planet." As a 12-year-old, immediately obsessed with her. Of course, like she's like beautiful. She's like dangerous. Like your mom has opinions about her, so she's already like a little taboo. So you're like, "Oh, well, mom
like
thinks
you know
she's
that
bad."
Your older sister and your mom are like the same person, but different relations to you. And then there's this cool aunt that's like, "Oh, well, obviously she's me. Clearly." Yeah. And Jillian immediately takes a liking to Kylie too, which is interesting to me. She's like, "Oh no, I love," like she loves Antonia too, but she's like, "Oh my gosh, Kylie, I want to take you and teach you and protect you from all the things I went through. Like I can see you, I can see myself so much in you, and you don't do this. Don't do what I did, but also don't do what your mom did."
Yeah, like especially after like what just happened to Jillian, like within a week is Kylie's birthday. And so Jillian is like, "Kylie, meet me after my work at the diner and we're gonna do something." She cuts and dyes Kylie's hair blonde. Kylie has like red hair, I think.
The bright red, beautiful hair.
She dyes it
platinum blonde.
Without talking
in
to
the
Sally.
Bathroom of the diner.
In the bathroom, and it's sketchy too. Like it's sketchy Walmart bleach, like not good for your hair. And like gives her like a whole little outfit of her clothes before they go to the birthday dinner, which they're terribly late for.
Yeah, and, like an hour later.
Sally is pissed off. Antonia is also just like hangry. And then Kylie has this like described weirdo best friend. And he's there and he's just like awkwardly sitting there, and like it's just
he has this like awakening of like, "Oh my god, you're a hot girl. You're not just my friend."
When Kylie comes in and like, she has like her little moment, Sally flips her shit, of course, because like, which like I understand like letting kids dye their hair to express themselves, like that's cool, but also I can understand as a mom not knowing it's gonna happen, And of course Sally's so protective over her kids, but especially like it's a weird situation because she has Jillian who like she's trying to like care for in this moment during this traumatic weird thing that they can't talk about. But then she's also trying to protect her kids from that, but also all under the same roof. So like Sally just has like a little mental breakdown, which like
Yes.
I would too, girl.
Yeah. It felt like the birthday dinner was kind of a test. Like Sally was noticing that Kylie was getting closer to Jillian. She was noticing that Jillian was like getting comfortable living with her and like not being as cautious as she was. And she's like, okay, are you going to break my rules and take my child away from me?
Yeah.
Show up to this dinner on time and we'll be fine. And if she's late, her kid's in this crazy new outfit. She's got this crazy new hairstyle, and it's just like, oh shit, okay.
Just
like,
awful.
Yeah.
And so Sally takes the girls and Kylie's friend and leaves. But the biology teacher, Ben Fry, the biology high school teacher, is also at this restaurant and is immediately in like insta love with Jillian and is like, I need to go talk to that woman. And so he goes and talks to that woman, and Jillian also is like, oh no, I'm feeling these similar feelings I felt before, kind of. So
she's so cautious though. She's like, okay, you're great, I get it, we know where this is going, but I'm not gonna do this to you.
Yeah. And then this section like ends. We get a little bit more info from Kylie. We find out that she sees auras of people, like people have different color auras. And then she looks over to the lilac bush and she sees a man. And that's how the section ends. And you're just like, what?
That, I think, is the moment that you can't deny that there's some kind of supernatural situation going on.
Yeah,
like
this is like the most
everything else is like, yeah, okay, here is this, like these ants are playing off of emotions and trends and patterns. Like you could play all that off, but then Kylie sees colors are on people and this very specifically described man under the lilac bush. And it's kind of like, okay, any of you skepticists out there, it's over.
You can't hide from that.
Right.
Yeah. And then the next section is called Clairvoyance. This book just takes place mostly over a summer from now on, right?
Yeah.
She just turned 13. Yeah.
It's like
very good description. So Sally and Jillian are in like a mega feud. Like super like bad feud, not talking. And also like there's like describes how like a spirit is like making stuff disappear. So like earrings will appear, like Sally's earrings will appear in Jillian's pocket, and like stuff is getting moved around, and it's like spooky. Excuse me.
I forgot during that part that they weren't at the aunt's house, because that kind of stuff happened at the aunt's house when they were younger. And I was like, oh, so it's not just the house, it's like something within else. Them.
Yeah, just like stuff is moving and stuff is disappearing and spooky.
Just like mischief.
This hocus pocus. But then we get a few paragraphs of Ben Fry being obsessively in love with Jillian. And it's very, I do like Ben a lot as a character. But Jillian is like also in love, but trying to avoid it so much, which like makes sense. She just went through this traumatic thing with her last partner. Also, it's been like not even a few weeks, you know.
Well, like, and I feel like people will do one of two things. They'll either like dive into the Ben Fry and just absolutely ruin Ben Fry, or they're like, hey, you're great, but stay away from me.
Yeah.
And I feel like she's doing the better of the two options, which is to like protect Ben Fry at all costs. But also it's like, oh, but he loves you in a real love kind of way.
Yeah. And like during this, we also find out that Antonia had a crush on her teacher, Ben. And so she's like low-key depressed and like it's also like sides with her mom quote and being like, yeah, we don't like Jillian right now, and like but for like selfish dumb little kid reasons. But
she was already jealous of Jillian and Kylie, and then this didn't help.
So poor Antonia is jealous again, and then she's working at her ice cream shop when a boy who a year ahead of her comes back for the summer and like comes and talks to her, and it is like, oh wait, you aren't that stuck up kid I thought you were. Like you're actually
this
like
is Scott.
Yeah, and like they have this cute little romance, and like we don't get to see much of it, but it's like it's very cute. And just like
It's the amount of writing energy that is given to Antonia and Scott is how I feel like my parents pictured my high school relationships. It's like, okay, this is important to you, but like we're not into it kind of
yeah.
situation. And I'm just like, wow, okay, great job.
Yeah, and like they're like, we see them later on in the book and they're still together, but like am I
Hmm.
convinced that in 2 years they're gonna still be together when Antonia goes to school? No. No.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
I mean, maybe, but like, no,
But it's like
no.
a sweet like first romance, that she's
Yes,
having.
yes. And
Very,
she
yeah.
deserves it,
Yeah.
honestly. She's been through it.
Mm-hmm. Um And then we have a lot of descriptions of Kylie just watching the lilac bushes. And the lilac bushes at this point, it's been like a week or two. They have suddenly, like, it's out of season two for lilacs, apparently. But they, like, super grow. Like, they're growing, like, immensely. So much so that, like, the neighbors are coming to see it. The, like, people want to come and do, like, biologists come over and be like, can we study this, like, thing? And they're, like, shooing
Yeah.
people away. But Kylie's, like, watching, like, people watching. But also, she, like, keeps seeing a man who
Hmm.
she does not know is Jimmy because she does not know of the situation at all.
Right.
Only Jillian and Sally know at this point. But she's like, she sees this guy and he like keeps like staring at her and like smoking and like when he puts a
He
cigarette on
is
the
very much
yeah,
aware of her also.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is creepy. It's creepy. And like I'm such a wuss
Yeah.
that I'm like, this paragraph is scaring me so bad. um
Yes.
but eventually Kylie tells Sally and Jillian that Jimmy is haunting her, thankfully.
Well,
But
they figure out
yeah.
it's Jimmy, and they're
Yeah.
like, they are like, oh God, okay.
Yeah, she's like, this
Yeah.
man, I can see this
Yeah.
man out there, no one else sees it. That's weird.
Mhm.
And so Sally cuts down the lilacs and then like Sally cuts down the lilacs and her and Julian start to make up a little bit, not quite,
Mhm.
but like all the creepy stuff that's happening in the house, the stuff disappearing stops. So like
Yes.
there's like this weird connection between Sally, Jimmy, the house, or Kylie, Jimmy, the house, and like the creepy things going on.
Yeah. I
Um,
also felt like the way that Kylie was watching the lilacs and like the women coming to cry under the lilacs and all that stuff was very reminiscent of Sally and Jillian standing on the back stairs watching the ants do
mm-hmm.
their rituals with the women. And I was like, oh, you think you're getting away from it, but you have actually no idea that your kids
Yeah.
are just keeping up this whole pattern.
Yeah.
The lilacs being kind of their own character was a very interesting way to like tie all that
Mm-hmm.
together.
Definitely. Absolutely. And I meant to look it up. I meant to see if lilacs like have a meaning. You know what I mean? Because I don't
I'll
know
look
anything
it up
about
right now.
lilacs. They're not like
Lilac.
they're not the few flowers I know things about. I know like four things about flowers.
Yeah, I don't know anything. The lore and magic of lilacs. Lilacs are used by modern witches. Renewal, apotropic warding, banishing, death, and mourning. The sweet scent drifting across the evening air tells the lilacs are starting to bloom. Generally found in old gardens.
I mean, it makes sense
I think that'd be a
if they're used for
three.
death and mourning.
Definitely sounds like a like sort of um apotropic means evil repelling, which is interesting because it seems like they're really thriving off this evil spirit under them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it
That's
definitely sounds
weird.
like it says lilac is used by modern witches for warding magic to protect your home. Plant a lilac
Mm-hmm.
near your door.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Anyways,
Interesting. Because we don't get any knowledge of why they chose a lilac bush. Like
yeah.
them one the decision to bury him in the yard is instant, but the decision to bury him under the lilacs, we don't know why, not the other flowers and stuff we assume that are in the garden.
Well, it
Right?
sounds like the lilac was the only like large shrub.
Yeah,
So
which
I can
would make
see putting
sense.
him there, like on the edge, kind of on the far edge away from the house,
Mm-hmm.
which makes sense, but it almost feels like that choice would like backfired on them. Like he used the energy of the lilacs to
Yeah,
sort of terrorize Kylie.
yeah, for sure. Then we get a brief backstory of Maria Owens, who is the matriarch of the Owens clan, and like
So cool.
so cool. Like I am for sure reading the books there's a book that follows her, and I'm like, I'm gonna read it. Historical witchy book. Hell yeah.
Yes.
Again, we can't believe we went to Salem without reading this book.
I know.
We're such nerds that we didn't do the homework. We'll talk about this in the movie, but the movie is filmed in the islands off Seattle, where we'll both be in the spring. I'm just saying.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, there's like a little backstory of the Maria Owens, which I'm sure there's like foreshadowing bits in if we really wanted to analyze it, but really I just enjoyed it. I was like, oh, this is fun. A little break.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, things are better since the lilacs got cut down. And Jillian finally decides that she wants to be with Ben. And so she goes over and like this happens like essentially the women this is how the Owens women do romance. They avoid it and then they're like, for whatever reason, either logic, time, a sparrow not being there, whatever the like trigger is, they literally run towards the man, have a hot like make out plus more session, and then they're in love. Like that is it's like it happens over and over.
It's like this reluctant acceptance, and then it's like, all right, I guess I'm all in.
Yeah, but it's like 0 to 100, which is how a lot of people do love. Like I recognize that, but like that's not how everyone does. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just like the only person who doesn't do that are the kids essentially, but they're also kids. You know? But like both Julian and Sally multiple times are like 0 to 100 ready to go.
I also liked how they talked about how she's like, okay, like we can be in a relationship, but that's all I want to say about it. And then she kind of like slowly moves more and more of her stuff over there, and he just doesn't say anything about it. And I'm like, wow, you really understand her.
Yeah.
And if you said anything, you would scare her.
And when Jillian like decides like the first time, like it's describing them like making out or whatever, but like she has like this back and forth. That's this weirdest writing was where she's like in the moment with Ben, but then she has like this extreme PTSD with Jimmy. But then that PTSD is resolved by being like, oh, Ben is not doing anything I'm not letting him do. He is listening to me. He is respecting boundaries. Like we're communicating without alcohol. Like, you know, like all these things are so obvious of why her and Jimmy didn't work out for
she talks about how with Jimmy physical intimacy was like her kind of like safety net to get away from violence, and it's just such a different situation with Ben that she like he's like polar opposite to Jimmy, and I'm just like, oh, this is what you deserve, and I'm so happy that you not only that you're getting it, but you're recognizing that that's what's happening and that's how it should be. And it's a good, the way that Hoffman describes it all, I think is a really good way to kind of bring it around to that safe place.
Also, can we talk about the irony that Jillian is falling in love with a magician?
Oh, right. I kept forgetting, and then he would like pull flowers out of his sleeves, and I'm like, oh my god, okay.
He has a bunny named Buddy.
Yes, the bunny.
It's so cute. But I just thought it was, and it also describes Ben from his like POV for a second, that he also has abandonment issues of his own that we don't know why, but we get like a paragraph about it, and you're like, what, Ben? What?
Yeah, it's like Ben, okay.
But I like the irony of this obvious lady from a line of witches falls in love with a magician who has abandonment issues, but in the opposite problem. Whereas,
and he loves it. Like, you can tell that he's like, there's something happening here, and I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna go along with it.
But, like, she's so in love that she even like starts taking biology classes.
I love that for her. So she gets to like have interests outside of love and romance, and I just love seeing her like. She's like, oh, I went to the library and read about the way the heart beats and the way that sugar is metabolized. And I'm just like, oh, okay, go off, Jillian.
It's very sweet to see her like have, especially after this big like capital T trauma that she's gone through, to have this like sweet like opposite. But because she's at Ben's all the time, Kylie is then like feeling abandoned by Jillian and like is a little bit depressed, and like it's very like it mimics her mom's depression a bit, but it's not as long. But one day she decides, she's like, fine, I'm not gonna like, I can't remember if Antonia like says something snotty to her or something, but she's like, okay, fine, I'm gonna go and be like a human or whatever. And she goes to bake a cake for her friend Gideon. But then there's this toad that comes into the house and like
The
staring
toads
at
are a
her.
recurring situation.
Yeah, the toads like appear randomly. But like this toad has come into the house and is like staring at her and then like barfs up a ring. And we
Yeah.
and and like we all know this ring is Jimmy's ring as the reader because we know what it like is described when he like hit Jillian and stuff. Like it's very like a big symbol of Jimmy. But Kylie's like, huh, that's weird. A ring. I'm gonna
Yeah.
put it on the sink counter or whatever.
Yeah. And she's like used to the toads being kind of like an omen of sorts. So she's just kind of like, okay, thanks, bro.
Yeah. But she's made this cake and so because she's gonna go apologize and like make up and like maybe it's Gideon's birthday or something for because she's not talked to Gideon since her birthday, so she's gonna go walk there. And so this poor like 13-year-old girl is this part was hard to read because
it really
like
was.
oof.
I paused it and restarted the next day.
Yeah, it was hard to read, but she was like walking through like they live in New York suburbia, so she has to walk through like random turnpikes and highways.
Well, and it says
like,
she has to
grass.
choose between walking like the long way past the bar or like through this really dark field. And these guys have come out of the bar, so she's like, okay, not going that way. Let's go over
So
the
she goes
dark
to the
field.
field, but of course, the men see her going through the field and they start chasing her and harassing her and like
full out chasing her,
yeah.
not just like, hey, baby, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Just like
full out chasing, like she's running for her life. Like she falls in the mud, just like the cake is destroyed.
Yeah.
And like she runs and runs and she finally makes it up to like a populated street with like street lights so that they stop chasing her because they know that other people can see them. And like she's like safe and she
sounds like he's inches away and he's telling her all these terrible things he's gonna do to her, and she's just in the dark, terrified by this man that's clearly like stronger and bigger than her.
Yeah,
like
she's 13 and she's like described as being small anyways. Like
and now she's got her blonde hair and her new look and yeah.
And like it was just so like realistic. It was awful.
that was hard to hear for sure. Yeah. That's something that a lot of people have experienced. Absolutely.
And she ends up running into the ice cream shop her sister is working at. Thankfully, her sister's there, who's like I like Google eyes in love, right, with her Scotty boy. And she like sitting there. It takes a second. Antonia realizes it's her, and like immediately like gives her a hug, takes her to the back room, like.
She knows what happened as soon as she sees her sister.
And she just like lets her like
it makes
chill.
you think that this has happened to Antonia too.
And like Antonia is also, we don't talk about this, but she's always wearing black and she dyes everything she wears to be black. So it's like I think there is, because we don't get much of Antonia's POV, I definitely think
there's some kind of trauma there in some way, whether it's like that kind of trauma or just like some kind of weird childhood, like oh my dad situation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely weird. But the nice thing about this situation is that they see each other as like not as sisters at this moment, but as like women, and they're like, oh, I see you on a deeper level. I know this fear. And like immediately like they're getting along, which has never happened in their life suddenly. So it's just
huge moment.
Yeah. And I just like, of course this had to happen to the girl that just turned 13. It is sadly like it's a right of womanhood, especially in 95. It's only what 95 was not even 30 years ago, right? But like stuff hasn't changed that much, which is like what she wrote. Alice Hoffman wrote in the beginning in the intro. I was just like, oh boy, that section.
There was like an ending kind of acknowledgement thing too, where she was like, oh, okay, I wrote this so long ago and things really haven't changed that much. And it's just kind of like, yeah, no, we've all had, maybe not to this degree, but we've all had similar like harassment from drunk men.
Yeah. And so because they like have gotten along the next few days, they're not fighting, which the mom is realizing. They, Sally or Jillian has a job and is in love and like low key moving in with Ben. Antonia is in love and has a job and is living her own life. Kylie is no longer being haunted, and so she's like trying to figuring out her own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so Sally has this crisis of like, I'm not needed.
Nobody
What
needs
do I
me.
do? And she like
Yeah.
becomes sick in bed for 3 days, partially to be like, will anyone like come and like comfort
Yeah.
me? But like also because she's like having a crisis.
Yeah.
But this is when Jillian comes up and like they fully make up and Jillian drags her out of bed and they make margaritas and watch the stars. And it's like very sweet. But in my head, I was like, knowing the bit from the movie, I was like, this is literally a sentence from the book.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes, I agree. I had little like I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but I had little flashes of like, that was a huge part of the movie. Like,
right?
yeah,
So
it'll
I
be
thought that was
interesting.
fun.
It's just, yeah, Sally has gone so long where she has been the caretaker and everybody needs her. And it's almost like she made herself needed.
Absolutely.
But she was definitely filling an empty role. So it's like she made herself needed, but also somebody had to do it. And now everybody's growing up and everybody's kind of finding where they kind of settle into their own independence. And she's like, whoa, what do I do now?
Yeah, I agree. She like there was an empty role and she took it on because she got like, she got stuff from that. But like in reality, it should be a shared role where she was like, I got it. I got it. I got it. I got it. I promise I got it, guys. Right. So she has that breakdown, but it's Jillian again who brings her out of it. Jillian brought her out of the funk, or not really out of the funk, but like, like it's nice to see Jillian supportive in a Jillian way, not in a Sally way, but it still works. But then we get to the last section, levitation. It's towards the
and you're like, oh, everything's going great. What could possibly go wrong now?
The rest of the book. That's what goes wrong. Kylie, it's like almost August, and every August they go to their aunt's house for a trip to visit, and it's almost
not Jillian.
Not Jillian, yes, because Jillian was MIA this whole time.
So she also just, the idea of going back to the aunties for her is like trauma.
Yeah, which like everyone is like, we'll talk about that a little bit. Yeah,
right. Anyways, okay, fair.
It's like the day before they go, and Kylie is out like enjoying some tea out on the yard, but she's like, something feels different. And then Gideon shows up randomly to like reunite with her, and Gideon's like, hey, $10, I bet $10 that you can't beat me in chess. And so they play chess, but Gideon's like, if you don't beat me, then like it's like a test for him because he's worried that their relationship will be like, it was just like, I had that feeling a lot as a kid, right? You're like,
right.
Or they're like, they obviously,
he's like, I know you can beat me if you let me win. This is a problem.
If you let me win, you think of me differently. And because we're 13-year-olds, we don't know what that means. I'm sure in a year we'll understand that means that we have crushes on each other, but we don't know that yet, right? So that's the whole thing. And of course, Kylie beats him. And so he's like, okay, cool.
And she says too, she's like, this feels like a test, and there's no way she would ever let him win. So she has to do the hard thing. Like, she gives him a chance to escape, but she knows he won't see it.
Yeah. And Gideon's like, hey, let's go, let's go on a walk or something. Like, they don't want to go to his house because his mom never leaves him alone. And so they're like, okay, let's go on a walk. And Kylie is thinking like, this is the day before they go to the aunt's house, and she can usually see her summer vacations, and it's described for a moment like a memory, but then you realize like, no, she's describing seeing the future and like the big things they do. But she like is trying to picture them going to their aunt's house, and it's like blank, and she can't picture it. And you're like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And so she
says that she knows they won't go.
Yeah. And so she decides to go, and like, and they end up, she's like, okay, let's go on the walk. And she's like, just kidding, race me. And so they're running, just like being kids. But, and it's described like Kylie's like choosing to go towards her own future. So in a very similar way that Sally had to leave the house, this is like Kylie, like, I'm going to chase, like, I know something weird's happening, but I'm going to look the other way and just be in the moment for right now. And I like love that.
I thought she was going to run away. I was like, girl, you're too little. Like, I know you don't know it, but this is not the time. Like, I thought her and Gideon were going to run away together. And I was like, no, not right now.
That would have been a wild turn.
Yes.
But right as she's running away, we get a new character, and I was just like, why are we learning about a new character? In my brain, I was like, who is this guy? This Gary guy. So we find out about this Gary guy who loves murders, is how it's like described. And I'm like, what? And you find
Yeah,
out he's
and
a detective.
he's like in his own place. He's not even in New York or anything. He's
Yeah,
like off somewhere.
He's like driving and getting lost, and like describes how he like loves Arizona. And I'm like, who loves Arizona? Like,
Not
what?
I.
No. But we find out that he's a detective, and he's been looking for Jonathan Hawkins, aka Jimmy. And because apparently Jimmy like sold drugs to these college kids that made them die.
Right? I mean, like, sir.
Yeah, like,
And
oh,
yeah,
goodness.
kids were ODing on like some. It was like was it a mushroom or like it was a plant?
It was a plant,
a cactus
of some sort that he was selling, pretending it was LSD, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Which like apparently you could take one dose and be like fine, but these kids are taking more than that.
And well, it sounded like you could take one dose and be like tripping, but okay. Yeah. And 2 doses and you're like, whoa, okay, I may not come out of this well on the other end. And he was giving them a lot more than that.
Yeah, it's scary. But so we get this like whole POV of Gary meeting this character, and he ends up pulling up as Kylie's running away for fun, not for real. He pulls up to the house and knocks on Sally's door. But we also know that when he was doing his investigation, he was hanging out at Jimmy and Jillian's old place, and a letter was given to him that was already open. Like, he low-key tampered with mail, which is a federal offense. But like,
it sounds like it got like damaged in the mail. Like, it took a long time to get to where it was supposed to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he opens this letter, and it's a letter from Sally, and Sally like essentially pouring out her heart and trying to get Jillian to come and live with her and escape this horrible situation. And Gary, from this letter, falls in love with Sally. Like, he's infatuated with this
He's
lady.
Like, who is this woman that cares so much about her family and also totally gets that Jimmy is this terrible guy and just wants to open her heart, but she's like stern but also loving. Oh, he's obsessed.
Yeah, so he's showing up to this house to do his job, but also knowing he's about to meet the quote love of his life, like the obsession of his life, right? Yes. And so he knocks on the door, and Sally's like busy making this big goodbye dinner before they go on their vacation. And like they meet, and he is immediately like sucked into her. Like, the Owens all have gray eyes, like, as a whole thing, but he's immediately sucked into her gray eyes and like just immediately in love with her. And she's like, who are you?
And he thinks he knows her from this letter. He is like, I know your soul. I know who you are. Oh,
creepy.
Yeah, a little creepy.
A little creepy.
And she knows. She's like, oh fuck, this again. Okay.
Yeah, she's like, it's coming. We had a good 2 months of nothing, and now it's come to bite us in the butt. But he briefly interrogates her of like, hey, I'm looking for this guy. He Jimmy was known to be with your sister, and Sally like immediately is described as having like a heart attack. She's like, I cannot lie.
Yeah. And she is having a full-on panic attack. She's absolutely. Like chest tight, tears behind her eyes, like can't breathe. Yeah.
Also, but she gives him coffee, and every time he drinks coffee, he cries. Like, this is a character thing about Gary, is that he can't stop himself from crying. Like, he's like I avoid it, but once I start, I just cry, and I'm like,
that was a really interesting, and it happens more than once, where he's like, I was always told that it's okay to cry, and I'm like, okay, 1990s, I see you.
Yeah, but it's just like, it was just like a weird, like very specific thing. I'm like, interesting, mate.
I'm glad you thought it was a little weird too.
Yeah. But Sally Jillian's up in her room, and so Sally's like, hey, the detective's here. I can't lie. What the fuck are we gonna do? And Jillian's like, we're gonna lie.
Yeah, and Jillian's like, I'm not gonna tell you anything. Follow my lead.
Yeah. And Jillian's so confident about it. Of course she is.
Yeah.
But she goes down. Jillian does a really good job of like telling a version of the story that's not like the full truth, but not the full lie.
I stole his car and I left that guy. He was a shithead, like blah blah blah. And she doesn't know that he has this letter that's like, man, that guy sucks. Like,
yeah,
she doesn't know he knows that this guy is an abusive piece of shit already.
Mhm.
And so he's like, oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, and Sally's just sitting there trying not to look at this guy's eye because she also felt how intensely he was looking at her. You know, like not that she felt the same
Yep.
way immediately, but she was like, there's something weird going on there besides the situation. And so she's sitting there like not facing him, not answering questions because she's like, I won't lie. Like she just
Yeah.
won't.
She's like, I cannot look you in the eye.
Yeah, and of course, this Arizona obsessed guy sees this little cactus on the windowsill and is like, that guy, the cactus is almost dying. It should look better. And what's on the cactus little thing? Oh, a silver ring. And he points it out to them. And they had not noticed this ring. And it's obviously Jimmy's ring. Like he's like,
Yeah.
infamous from
He
it.
knows.
Yeah.
And it like has
so,
left imprints on people's cheeks. Like they know they're looking for this ring.
yeah. And they decide to give him the ring, which I was like,
That was an interesting choice. They're
yeah.
like, this whole thing, who knows? Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I would have said if this is the better lie Julia should have said. She should have said, "Oh, my niece is really into jewelry making. She just leaves stuff everywhere."
I would have
You
said,
know?
Jimmy proposed to me and gave me this
Mm,
ring.
uh,
What the fuck else does he have? He doesn't
that's
he's
true.
never ever gonna spend any money on her.
That is a better lie.
Like I would have said, yeah, he proposed, gave me this ring, and I forgot that I had it when I stole his car, which you
Or I
already
s-
saw in the driveway.
or I stole it because it did so much damage to me. I wanted to take it. Like I wanted.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like
You know.
it's so distinct that the idea that it's not Jimmy's is not gonna sell anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, but Gary leaves and he's also like, also, I'm staying at this motel tonight. If there's anything else you want to tell me. And it's like a weird way. And I'm like, okay, detective.
This weird, sketchy motel that like there's no way
Yeah.
that's the best place to stay in town.
And he's like, I'm leaving tomorrow morning. So like, you got to tell me anything now. Also, I'm going to impound the car. And Jillian's
Yeah.
like, sure, take it.
Oh, Jillian was like, okay, thanks. I was
Yeah.
like, wait, that's how you get around.
Yeah.
But okay.
Yeah. And so Gary leaves. Sally and Jillian are freaking out some more. And Sally's like, I can't do it. I have to go tell him the truth. Like, I have to go. And Jillian's like,
Jillian's kind of like, okay, bro, if you're sure.
like, what the fuck? Okay. And so Sally leaves. Jillian is now in charge of dinner. And so instead of this homemade veggie lasagna and cheesecake, she's like, let's get all the fatty meats we can from this Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
And so
the dinner's like 3/4 made. It just needs to like be put in the oven. Yeah.
But she's like, nah, Chinese food. And so everyone's having this Chinese food and picking out, but also feel weird because their mom's not there. And so, but Sally's there at the motel waiting for him to get there. He gets there and he has this like weird, like, he's been like seeing her all over town. He thought he saw her at the
where
chicken
did
place.
He go?
Went to
Where
the chicken
was
place. He
But,
got
like,
chicken.
He went and got chicken. She had a heart to heart with her sister and declared her need to tell the truth, and she still beat him home. Like,
He got
what
lost
kind of chicken
earlier.
place is
He might
this?
have gotten lost again.
Okay, maybe.
There's no
I don't know.
GPSs. It's 1995.
And the way that the lady at the motel just like
Yes.
hands Sally the key to his hotel room. Like,
I mean, it's a sketchy motel.
Okay. I mean, yeah, but like, does she look like she might be selling her body? I don't know.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like she would.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But she's like in her car waiting in the rain because of course it's raining. There's a big storm right now. That's important. There's like a big hurricane.
The storm has been coming on for days, and they're expecting it to like wash out roads and stuff.
Yeah. So there's a big storm coming in. So she's in the car waiting. He like comes in and he's like, I've been seeing her at the chicken stop, at the turnpike. I see her everywhere. Oh look, there she is again. Oh wait, that's her car. Oh wait,
there she really is.
And like he goes and she like invites him in the car and like has this whole like, I cannot lie anymore. Like I can tell you.
Okay, but wait.
Yeah.
He puts his chicken outside the car.
I thought he brought it inside the car, out of the rain.
He brought it in, and then she's like, I'm ruining your dinner. And he's like, nah, don't worry about it. I'm not hungry. And puts his chicken that he spent, like 3 hours acquiring outside the car.
The poor chicken.
I know.
And the onion rings, which are famous.
Right? Yeah, I was just kind of like, okay, you can both eat.
Anything for love, apparently.
I'm picturing a bucket of KFC
Yeah.
chicken that he just
Yeah.
like sets on the ground.
Just immediately soaked. The cardboard circles like falling apart
Mhm.
immediately.
Yes.
But like she like it's like, okay, I cannot lie. I know where he is. He's dead. And then like he doesn't really ask many more questions, but she also doesn't like it's like a weird scene because he's like,
Okay, but she says he's not going to hurt anybody else. The
yeah,
only way he can hurt anybody is if you keep looking for him.
yeah.
And he's like, all right, I know what you mean. I
Hmm.
get it. Like
Hmm.
that's all I really actually wanted out of this, but
Yeah.
I can't really give you an answer right now. Like
And
I
he's
love you, but I
yeah.
love justice.
Yeah, he's like, I love justice so much. I don't know what to do in this moment. They like make out for a bit,
Yeah,
which
yes.
is again,
And stuff.
see, yeah, like
Yeah.
0 to 100. Like
Hmm.
and so
But
and
they've been lusting after each other for a couple hours now.
I know it's true, they waited so long.
I know, right? Ugh.
um but yeah, and so she decides not to tell him anymore. He decides not to ask anymore. And then like she like kicks him out of the car and then she goes home. And it's like it's just a weird I don't know. It's a weird scene.
Yeah, it was, but also like it feels kind of realistic in a sense. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, like you don't want to say like my sister definitely killed this guy and I buried him in my backyard, but
Hmm.
also this guy's in love with this girl, supposedly. He's not going to be like, where the fuck is Jimmy?
And she like stops the like them from doing anything further to protect herself because she has all this like baggage from her like
Yeah.
obviously her trauma with her ex or her husband who died. Right.
Well, she says, doesn't she? She's like, I could just be doing this so that
Mhm.
in hopes that you will not look any further into this. And he's like, you're not that person. And
How do
she's
you
like, how
know,
do you
sir?
know?
How
She
do you
says that. She's like, how do
know?
you know that? Oh gosh. And
Yeah.
then they get emotioned out and kind of part ways and you don't really hear anything for a little bit.
Yeah. And then she gets home and Sally's like, Jillian, what are we gonna do? Ask Jillian a question for the first time in Jillian's life. Jillian's been asked for advice or for something to do. And she's like, call the ants. Finally. Like, that's what I would have
But
done in the
she
first
didn't
place.
but she said that and Sally said no, right? Because didn't
I
Jillian call the ants behind Sally's back? And the ants kind of show up and
I
run the world for a minute.
I don't think so. No.
I don't remember exactly, but
Sally asked, what do we do? It's the first time she ever asked Jillian an opinion or advice. And then Jillian says, call the ants. Do it now.
there you go. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I
So they call
remember
the
it. Do it
ants.
now.
The ants come in on the Greyhound the next day with their black coats and black bags that are super heavy, and they're just
Super heavy. And the
super
driver's like,
heavy.
hey, everybody stop. I'm helping these ladies.
Yeah, which is like so weird, but
Yes.
like gotta help the elders, I guess. But it is cute. Sally tells her neighbor, like, oh, my aunts are coming in tomorrow. Also, they're a little bit weird. So just like, and very old. So just like, here she is again,
like,
trying to protect her
Yeah.
reputation. Yeah.
And this is the first real like physical description we get of the ants. And
Mhm.
it's like one has dark hair, one has light hair, and you're like,
Okay.
oh, okay.
And then one
Yeah.
has arthritis, and so she's like bent over and has a cane, and the other one doesn't. And like, that's the
Yeah.
descriptions we get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then they talk about how they lived in these very rigid scheduled
Mhm.
lives, and then these girls called them and they needed their help and they loved them so much, but they weren't going to change their schedule.
Yes.
Which like relatable, but also
Yes.
but also that was kind of the first any sort of like point of view you got from the ants or like about how the ants felt about the situation, and it was not what I expected.
Yeah, we finally get their names too.
Yes.
I forget. I read it 4 hours ago and I already forgot. I know one is Bridget, but they call her Aunt Jet. But I forget the other ones. Oh, here it is. Aunt Frances and Aunt Bridget.
Frances, yeah.
AKA Jet. So Frances and Jet. Yeah, so the aunts arrive and they're like, it's super cute little reunion with the girls too. And Sally and Jillian are describing the problem with the yard to the ants, and the girls, Kylie and Antonia, like eardrop, and Sally's like, the girls can't listen to this, and the ants and Jillian are like, they're old enough, let them listen.
Yeah.
Like, which is like
they're
good,
like, okay,
bringing,
you know that they're just gonna listen at the back stairs, just like you did.
Yeah, like so there's like bringing in the next generation essentially of
Yeah.
sisters into the literal sisterhood of this. But the ants get to work right away. They start brewing this like 3.5 hour potion with a lot of lye, essentially.
A lot of lye.
A lot of lye.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then they brought rocks. They brought the rocks in there.
Pebbles from Maria. Yeah. So they're like, so essentially they brew a potion, and they take this potion and they take it over to the area where now, since they cut down the lilacs, brambles have now grown up, like brambles that they couldn't cut through again. So like,
and a cowboy boot.
Oh yeah, a cowboy boot had showed up.
Yeah,
too,
a boot surfaced, and they were like, "Oh shit, what's next? Like, is all of Jimmy's body gonna pop up to the surface?"
Exactly. And so this potion essentially can like melt the remains. Is like the purpose of it. So they like pour they pour it all over where the body was buried, and then where Kylie was standing suddenly becomes a little sinkhole, and she almost gets sucked under because Kylie's connected spiritually, right? And then Tonia is the one that grabs her shirt and like aggressively pulls her, and Antonia saves her. And I'm just like, the like parallels. And
and it's interesting because it's like, if they hadn't had that moment of connection at the ice cream shop after Kylie almost got attacked by that guy, like, would she have been able to save her? Like, would she have been carrying the heavy pot with her? Like,
she wouldn't have cared. She wouldn't have looked, right? They so they're like, which is weird. Like, it's like, okay,
they're like solidifying.
They had to have that connection, unfortunately, but that like made it stronger and like helped them in the future, like saved Kylie's life from the underworld ? We don't really know.
the weird demon man. I don't know.
But then so they do that, and then they put these blue pebbles that were originally from Maria Owens. So like at the old house, the aunt's house, this is the pebbles on there that they use on the path, but there's extras just in the shed. There's extras.
Yeah, there just happens to be some more.
Yeah, for hundreds of years. Never used.
And they were like, these could be useful. We're going to save them.
Yeah.
Just in case somebody ever kills anybody.
Yeah. And so they make a patio, which then there's a little description about how the patio is now known as a good luck patio from all the little kids in the neighborhoods from future.
It's so cute.
It's like very sweet. But that's like, so that's how everything with the Jimmy thing is resolved in that moment. Like, the body is gone. The hauntings are gone. Like, that
like
physically,
they have peace in their lives.
Yeah. And then
they also went through this scene of like, Jillian is like, I killed him, and the ants are kind of like, okay, well, if you killed him, we have to do things differently. Tell me what really happened.
Yeah. And
then she was like, well, this is how much nightshade I was giving them. And they were like, oh, there's no way. There's absolutely no way that he overdosed on that. Like, absolutely. Like, probably it wasn't doing anything for you. Like, you were just kind of wasting nightshade, basically. And everybody's kind of like, oh, okay, great. So what now?
But like, we don't really find out what actually killed Jimmy, though. We just assume alcoholism.
I'm assuming alcoholism, and like, he probably was getting into his own weird drug stuff.
True.
And maybe the nightshade was having some weird interaction with that weird cactus drug thing. I mean, there's so many experimental things happening that it's easy to imagine that something just got him.
Yeah, that's true. But we do find out, like, Jillian's conscience is like cleaned from that guilt. Like, it's not
because of the ants. And she didn't even like, she was so afraid to see the ants, and then it was like,
afraid. And then she was so grateful that they were there too. Like, it was like, it's a very nice like come around for them. And like, they're all happy. And then we fast forward to that Thanksgiving. They decide to go ahead and have Thanksgiving at the aunt's house, and they bring along Ben. And Antonia is
didn't Ben do magic for the ants?
Yeah, Ben did, like, pulled out flowers and stuff.
Ben shows up in the storm before all this happens, and he's like, oh, I just want to make sure you're okay. And she's like, my aunts are here. It's really freaking weird. Like, you need to go home. And he's like, no, this is great. I get to meet your family. And just kind of storms in there. And the aunts love him. Yes. And it's that was a cute little paragraph or two.
Definitely. And then he's at Thanksgiving. All the girls are at Thanksgiving. Antonia's having Scott, and Scott's like two college roommates come over for Thanksgiving,
I forgot about
which is
that.
like the most like freshman year Thanksgiving break relatable
So
thing,
relatable. I
right?
don't have anywhere to go. Can I go with you to your girlfriend's aunt's house? Yeah,
Exactly.
bro, sure.
Yeah, and they have Thanksgiving, and days later, Jillian and Ben decide to go get married. It talks about how they went to the courthouse and they were kissing so long that they had were asked to stop. Like,
Yeah.
but before they leave Thanksgiving, Sally and is that they're at the aunt's house, right?
Were
When
they at the aunt's house or did she have the aunts over for Thanksgiving?
well, they went to the aunt's house for Thanksgiving. I remember that.
Yeah, you're right. They
Yeah,
must have still been at the aunt's house.
yeah. Sally and Jillian are outside, looking at stars or something, just having like a
Yeah,
sister
they're having like
moment.
it was kind of like the margarita moment, but
Yeah,
again, like a peaceful version
yeah.
of yeah.
They're out there, and Jillian's like, "You need to go talk to Gary. Like, have you heard from him?" Because they've gotten back information from Gary. Oh yeah, they got information from Gary that or the DA in Arizona that Jimmy's body was found in the desert after something like he had fallen into a fire and it was unrecognizable, but
But his
but the
ring,
rig was in there,
yeah.
and so they got mailed back the rig and money
He
for
died
the
by an accident and they
yeah.
considered him guilty for the murders and
Yeah, and so
yeah.
essentially it's aka Gary figured out how to get Jimmy charged, but also the girls off the hook,
Hmm.
which is like his way of balancing justice and love. And then so Jillian's like, you
Except
need to
for whoever's body that was, but that's a different story.
yeah, right. But Jillian's like, hey, you need to reach out to Gary. Like, he obviously like loves you. He did this for you. And she's like, Sally's like, I don't know, I don't know. And then they turn around and Gary's in the yard, and like, and Jill and Sally's like, oh, the ants did this, right? They made a potion or something. And
They found they
yeah,
found the dove heart in the fridge.
oh yeah,
And Sally was like, the ants, they did this
ants.
with this dove
And
heart.
and Jillian's like, I don't know. But we find out that Jillian just called him up and was like, come over and talk to
Yeah,
her.
like, hey, my
Yeah.
sister loves you.
So
Come out
even though
here.
like there's this magic that could have worked to spell, it really was just communication was the true magic after all.
Yes. It's like
But
a whole like maybe there's magic. Oh, there's definitely magic. And then like, wait,
mhm.
maybe that wasn't magic all along.
Yeah, and so Sally is in love again. Um, and it's just a really cute thing. But then the ending is like the iconic beginning of the movie, right? So the last few lines are, I'll just read it. There are some things after all that Sally Owens knows for certain. Always throw spilled salt over your left shoulder. Keep rosemary by your garden gate. Add pepper to your mashed potatoes. Plant roses and lavender for luck. Fall in love whenever you can. Oh, that's how the story ends. And everyone's happily ever after in their own versions, right? All slightly
Yes.
different. But it's just, what a book.
I think it's so interesting that like all those different versions of happy are so relatable, even like what 20 something, 28 years later,
Mhm.
as far as like, yeah, I loved the book so much.
It was such a
So
good
much.
book. Like, I feel like part of what made this book great is kind of what you just said is that even though this is set in like most of it's set in the 90s, but earlier, right? And we don't have smartphones, we don't have GPSs, like modern tech, but like it feels like it could have happened today. Like it still feels modern enough
Yeah.
without
You could
potholes.
easily move it to like the 20 teens and have the
Mhm.
girls like depressed about Snapchat and
Yeah.
like, oh, everybody follows her on Instagram. Like
Hmm.
you could
Yeah.
easily translate it to today.
Yeah, I felt like it like is has a lot of timelessness about it. I felt like um I just and then like even though I don't like I don't know, I just really liked it even though I don't have a literal sister. Like it just like was so good. And
I loved it. I
it
will
was
definitely read it again, and you know that I don't do that.
yeah, it was really good. I want to read the rest of the books. I do think the like lack of actual magic is a pro.
I
Like
agree. It's handled very well.
mhm. Like and like not to like it's handled very well. It's very practical, practical magic,
Yeah.
but like there's not much magic at all. Like we were saying, like
Yeah.
yes, the ants do some stuff, and the house has like spiritual elements. There's a ghost, and then Kylie can see the future, kind of, but not really, but like
Yeah.
auras. So like it's nothing super out of the actual ordinary.
A lot of it could be explained away by like they were looking for these things. And
Yes.
we all know when we're looking for something, it's just like when you get a new car, suddenly everybody's driving that same car.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just when you're watching, like they stalked that girl at the drugstore. Of course, everything that happened to her became something related to them.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah,
But I really enjoyed this book. And I'm very excited
I
to watch the
loved it.
movie. Because I think it's so much, like from my memory, I think it's so different. And
Yeah,
I'm very excited about that.
I haven't watched it since at least high school, which was over 10 years ago now, and it's definitely different, and I am very excited to watch it from this perspective. And
Yeah.
oh, it's just such a good movie.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited. I think this book was great. Like if I had to rate it, I would say 4 to maybe 4.5 stars. Just because I had a little bit of issue of the 0 to 100 love that was everyone's
Yeah.
version. Like the way, like the reasons and the actual love that they all experienced was different and like relatable, but like they all were like 0 to 100, like Roadrunner style love. When I'm like, with the exception of Kylie, but she's also 13, so she's not in love yet.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree with all of that. Definitely 4 to 4.5 stars. I think the like super Fast and Furious love things, I think they're a little bit saved by they talked about how Jillian's love with Ben is different than love that she's had before. And I'm like, oh, maybe that just wasn't really love before.
Yeah,
Or like,
maybe.
yeah. And it's very heavily insinuated that like, oh, she's realizing that love is something different than she thought it was forever. And I think that that's what kind of saves it for me. But yeah, oh, it was so good.
Would you consider this book a romance?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, when I think of a romance, I think of like one central character going through different romantic things, even if it's not just one love story, like she has multiple relationships. I think of one central character, and I don't think that that's how, obviously, this is not how this book is, but it definitely is on the romantic scale for sure.
Yeah.
Like, love is definitely a big theme of it.
Yeah. I was just trying to figure out like where I would put this genre wise. And like it is just like at Barnes Noble in a literary fiction section with all of her books. Because I don't think it's a romance for like similar reasons. Like you said, like I wouldn't categorize that. Like it has romantic plot lines, sure. And I wouldn't consider it like fantasy or supernatural because it's barely supernatural.
Right.
It's just like I'd say it's like a family drama is what I would say, I think.
That's a good, maybe like, I don't know, maybe like fantasy family drama. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like it solidly falls into one genre, but I also like mixing them also gives you a very, I feel like when I say two things together, it gives you sort of a pathway in your head, and I don't think this really follows it.
Yeah. I looked up briefly just other books she had written. And she's written a lot of other books, but she wrote Aquamarine, which then was turned into the Aquamarine movie with JoJo.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So our friend Charlotte, who was on the Hitchhiker's Guide podcast last week, she and I have a shared love, as many people do, with the movie Aquamarine. And so when I found that out, I like texted her. I was like, Charlotte, we have to read Aquamarine for the podcast. Yes! So I'm not promising it in the near future, but like one day I'm gonna read Aquamarine. Any last thoughts before we end the pod?
I don't think anything specific. I think I think we covered most of it, maybe out of order, but
I think we did good. Cool. Next week we'll be watching the movie Practical Magic, so watch along and listen along. Thank you guys for subscribing and rating and all that. Follow me, the podcast, at on Instagram at Read the Book First podcast. Updates will be coming up there for the next few weeks. I have some fun plans going into the holiday season. Very fun plans. And yeah, thank you guys for listening. And until next time, read the book first.